When we see a number so grossly overstated, we can't just stand there and let voters assume that's fact.
The Attorney General released a report on the cost of the death penalty today. Good evening and thanks for joining us.
Economist Ernie Goss, you might remember, recently said the death penalty costs Nebraska about $14 million a year.
But the Attorney General says those numbers don't add up. Channel 8 Eyewitness News reporter Abigail Wood has more in our top story. Abigail?
Well, voters will decide whether to bring back the death penalty in November. As soon as the Attorney General released his own 13-page report today, at least one senator sided with Goss.
Back in August, Creighton University economist Ernie Goss released a study saying the death penalty would cost Nebraskans $14 million a year. Wednesday, Nebraska Attorney General Doug Peterson put out his own report saying Goss's study has concerning holes.
It was important for us to show the different factual assumptions that went into the analysis are wrong. They're assumptions made in other states. It's not true to Nebraska, and so we went back and we looked at the last 10 death row inmate trials, and we were able to provide more accurate information and to address the falsehoods that were in the report.
The Attorney General highlighted 6 of Goss's claims that he says are false. For example, Goss says the cost of death penalty appeals is higher than other criminal appeals. The Attorney General's office says that's not the case and that death penalty appeals are only a tiny part of their work.
We have 65 lawyers in this office. 9 of those lawyers are dedicated to this work, and less than 1% of their work is associated with death penalty cases.
The Attorney General says Goss relied too heavily on information outside Nebraska, applying information from states with as many as 700 inmates on death row to Nebraska, where we only have 10. He wants voters to be informed.
Whether they choose to vote for or against the death penalty, we can't influence that. But what we can influence in the Attorney General's office is to make sure they get accurate information. And when we saw this report, we were very concerned that they were getting grossly overstated, inaccurate information.
State Senator Kate Bowles came to Goss's defense, saying she still stands by nationwide cost studies she says show the death penalty is more expensive. She cites more than 40 appeals available only to death row cases, the extra cost of separate housing for death row inmates, and a 3-part trial instead of 1.
I've looked at it from the eyes of an appropriator who has been doing state fiscal work for the last 4 years, and I'm convinced. It's an in-depth study. It's based on models from other states. It's looking at costs that are in some ways specific to Nebraska. And so I think any additional analysis would be duplicative.
Another interesting thing, the fiscal note on last year's bill repealing the death penalty said there is little to no impact either way.
Abigail Wood from the newsroom tonight.